Thank you very much, Chris, for that introduction. So, pleasure to be here this evening. My name is Rosie, and I work at the BBC. And this evening, I'm going to be talking a little bit around those challenges that we have when we are doing user testing with children. Children are human, they are adults, so the next couple of talks after me I'm really intrigued about, because at least these children do, for the most part, speak in some way. Mightn't always be the things you want them to talk about, but hopefully over the next 20 or 25 minutes, you'll understand some of the tools and techniques that we use in order to get the most out of those user testing sessions, which can be quite challenging at times. So a little bit about me then. So I'm a research specialist, I'm a design researcher, and one of the areas I look after in the BBC is the children's stuff. So that's our audience who are 0 right up to the age of 12. So if you're not familiar, we've got 2 channels on our TV in the BBC, CBeebies and CBBC, the latter being for the older age group. And digitally, that means that we have got a whole stack of stuff. We have got apps, we've got games, we've got 2 websites. We've also got lots and lots of content on the iPlayer as well. So it's really important that when we are looking at this stuff, and there's so much of it, that we get it right each and every time. And actually, CBBC and CBeebies, they are the most watched kids' TV channel for kids of that age. So there's a lot of pressure on us to do well. And also, these children deserve the respect of doing good design. I think sometimes there's a feeling that, oh, they're kids, oh, they'll get used to it. But that's actually not true at all. So really, from a research perspective, we're always trying to answer 3 questions, or 3 types of questions. And these have been nicely articulated by a guy called Tomer Sharon, who is a design researcher in Google. So I nicked his questions because I think they're bang on right. Essentially, we're trying to figure out what it is our users need. And what is it that they want? It's kind of a similarity there, but there is a distinction between those 2 questions. And finally, can they use the thing that we give them? So we've figured out what it is they need and what they want. And now we've built it, and we go, great, so let's see it work. And that's where, obviously, the design research comes in. Now, this is kind of how I felt before I did my first user testing session with a child. It actually turned out really well. She was great. But I kind of thought, oh, God, oh, what's going to happen? And I was working with a colleague of mine, and he had never done any research with kids up to a couple of weeks ago. And I said, now, George, come on, we're gonna get you doing a session. In the BBC, we're doing so much research all the time that we always encourage our designers to run research sessions themselves so that the work actually gets done. So myself and George have been working on this piece of research, and I said, right, we're gonna get you running some of the sessions. I'll lead, I'll do the first couple, and then you're gonna step in and do the next. And so he's like, yep, great, yeah, I know what I'm doing. And it came to about 5 minutes before, and I said, okay, next little lad is coming in, are you ready? And he kind of pulled a face like that, and I thought, God, that's exactly how I felt a few years ago. And I think the reason for that is that we fear something about kids. And one of my other colleagues said, I think that kids are like horses. I think they can smell the fear on you. And I did kind of think, but I think there is actually something in that. I do get what she means, because I think when you kind of get a little bit awkward, then they get a little bit awkward, and the whole thing becomes a little bit awkward. But essentially, we're kind of worrying that, oh my God, are we going to make this child cry? Is he going to just look at me and go, what? Or are they going to just turn and hug their mum or dad instead? And I think that pressure and that fear isn't helped by the fact that you know that you've probably got 4 or 5 senior stakeholders all standing behind a glass watching you, and this is your big moment to shine. And then you think, oh my God, this is crumbling. So what I really want to talk about, there's kind of 2 ways to get through that. The first thing is almost your basics. So if there's a few things that you do, you're setting yourself up in a good place to get a good user session done. And the second thing I mentioned before is the kind of tools, or the little toolkit that we have of little tips, I suppose, we've picked up along the way that we use in order to get the best session going. Kids don't always speak. Sometimes kids can't speak. And sometimes they're just hungry, or they're tired, or they're bored, or they're fed up, or it's late, or they're annoyed about something else. So you've got lots and lots and lots of factors around why children act the way they do. And sometimes we have no explanation for why they act the way they do. But essentially, to start with the basics, I've kind of put 4 basic things up here. So the time of day. Chris mentioned with adults, they're generally professional. They'll come in whenever they can. They'll sit. If they feel uncomfortable, they understand that there's a social etiquette to go in and going, God, this is awful, but I'm just going to answer this person's questions. So the time of day is really important for kids. We generally do our testing sessions in the afternoon from about 3 to 5 o'clock. So we'll catch them after school, but they're not at that point where they're dying for their tea. Also, the BBC has relationships with a lot of primary schools, and we're allowed to go in and work with kids in the classroom. It's brilliant because they've got lots of energy, they know what's expected of them. So time of day, we really wouldn't do anything late into the evening, whereas with adults, obviously, you can kind of get them any time of day you want. The length of session, with adults, we tend to do sessions about, if they're lab sessions, about 45 minutes to an hour. We'll go through lots of stuff. With kids, we would say a maximum of 20 minutes. And that includes your warm-up, which can take a while, and the wrap-up as well. So really, you're down to about 10, 15 minutes with a child. And that's because they simply, they just burn out. They've had enough. They're done doing what you want them to do. I've put consent up there. When we do research with kids, obviously the parent or the guardian will be given the formal consent, but I think, personally, it's really important that we explain to the child what's going on. I think this really helps to set the expectation for the child as well, of what's going on, what they're expected to do as well. So I'd always say, you know, I've got a couple of cameras in this room, there's a magic mirror over there, I'm going to ask you to do a couple of things. So it's almost an age-appropriate consent bit that I do with them. And then I've put discussion guide ? Sometimes when you're working with kids, you have to be prepared just to throw the discussion guide out the window. I'll give you a good example of this. We went into a special needs school in the summer to do some testing with a game we have. So we brought in a tablet that we got from the BBC, and I sat down beside a boy, and I wanted to kind of do a bit of a testing session with him, and I had a few objectives in my head. And really quickly, I'd say after about a minute, he closed the game down and figured out that someone had put Angry Birds on this tablet. And he said, oh, Angry Birds, and he clicked it, and he started playing it. So I said, oh, okay, great, yeah, I'm just going to bring you back. And I kind of tried to refocus him a couple of times. After the third time, I thought, oh, this is not going to go well. And I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to watch him play. I'm going to get feedback about Angry Birds, figure out what is it he loves about Angry Birds? What is his reaction to when certain things happen? And I used that as almost an applicable inside diving thing. And you just have to be able to do that with kids, because you may as well, if they're not going to cooperate, rather than make the whole session off in the bin, get something out of it. So that's almost the basics. And then the next few things are more about, as I say, the little techniques that we use ourselves. So the first thing we would always ask is the child comfortable? You can imagine being 3 feet tall and walking into a lab that's really set up for an adult. So everything's towering above you. You've got someone who looks a bit like your mum or your dad coming over quite friendly, going, oh, hello, la, la, la. And it's a weird environment. It's kind of strange. Mum's already prepared you, but you're not quite sure what's going on. So it's a little bit like this little guy. And you think, oh, God, if we can just get him to understand that it's going to be fun, they're going to get to explore, it's going to be safe, automatically the child will become more relaxed and you get much more out of that session. So we'd always say, you know, have a couch or a cushion, let them bring their teddy bear in, have mum nearby. The environment should feel comfortable. We're really lucky in the BBC that we have a usability lab internally. It's on the 5th floor of one of our buildings. And it's set up a little bit like a living room, and it's got a really nice tech bit to it. We've got remote cameras, I think 8 or 9 cameras or something like that, so people can view from the other side. Really nice, but it doesn't feel like a living room. It's a little bit unnatural, and it's quite obvious that it's not really a living room. And one of the things we noticed was that when we would go down and collect the child from reception, I'd go up to the child, I'd introduce myself, I'd say, hello, I'd always bring stickers. And I'd say, oh, you can pick a sticker and pick one for your mum. And this is what we're going to do today. We're going to have lots of fun. And the child would generally be quite open to that and go, yeah, okay, cool, yeah. So we're going to go through here. So I'd walk them through, get in the lift. And somewhere between the bit where I said hello, and we're going up this lift, down this corridor, turning around, going into the lab, the child is kind of just getting a little bit more nervous about what's going on, and then sit down on the edge of the seat and maybe chatting and chatting and chatting. And so many times I had designers and myself notice, God, that child was so chatty in reception. How do we stop them getting so nervous on the walk there? So we have this other room in the BBC. It's on the ground floor, and what they use it for is doing previews of shows. So they'll often bring classrooms of kids in, show them a show, and get feedback on that. It's not a research lab or anything. And I remember saying, God, this feels like this room would be perfect for us. It's almost like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. You know, it's a really short walk from the reception. It looks amazing. I bet a kid would just be like, wow, if he came in here. And so I said to the guys in our team, how do we get that Willy Wonka experience? How do we make it feel like this is going to be fun? So we did a bit of an experiment, and I'll show you what the room looks like here. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool if you're a little kid and you're walking in, and the eyes, they light up when they get to the door, and they say, right, we're going to go into this room here. It's a very special room. So come in. You can see they've got little tables here at the back. So you sit them on one of the tables, and you can see that glass over there is for actually just controlling the video that's on the projector. So it's not soundproof. You can actually see both ways. It's just a piece of glass. And we said, right, why don't we put the kids sitting there, facing away here? We got 2 tripods and 2 phones, and we stuck them on either end of the table, and we FaceTimed through to a laptop that was in that room. So everybody stood really silently in the room. The kid comes in, we put mum just behind, and it was amazing. The kid comes in going, wow, and almost like, you're great, you're going to do whatever I want you to do now when you're sitting and you're happy, because you never lost that momentum of when you met them in reception. So you can see that was the view from the gallery there. But of course, we don't actually always have access to that room, so we don't always get that golden ticket. So another little thing we do, this is one of, it's a remote lab of ours that we usually rent out, but you can see these fun cushions. Girls seem to love these cushions. We'll sometimes put these on the floor. They're actually really big. They don't show how big they are in the picture, but they're kind of that size. And we'll display them on the floor. And it's a little, okay, it doesn't look great in the picture, but it actually is quite a nice addition to the room. And we also have party bags here. Don't know what happened to the slide. We've got some party bags. So when they walk in, they go, ooh, cool. Oh, nice, fluffy cushions. Oh, okay. Now, of course, sometimes you don't have the money for that, or you don't have the golden ticket either. And something else we've done is we've just got loads of magazines, and we splay them out on the table. We've printed posters and stuck them on the wall. And then I put this in here, because one of the designers I work with always wears turtle clothes. And I thought, actually, it's quite a good point, because if I was wearing a corporate business suit and this child is coming into me, it's all about making them feel relaxed. And the little things like that can really make a huge difference. So once they're comfortable then, essentially, it's playtime. And making that playtime. So as I said, kids love having fun. They love to explore, and now we've got them feeling safe. Something that we always do, and we've started to do this all the time now, is that when we are starting off the session, it might be on a tablet or a phone, or it might be a new game. What we'll say is, I'm going to show you a new game, and you're the first person to see this. And all I want you to do is have a play with it. And we might throw in a little bit of a question in there, like, I want you to play with it. And while you're playing with it, can you find such a character? And I'm just going to pop out and get a drink. So we do that, give them the iPad, and then I'll leave the room and go right back and just stand in the gallery. And what you notice then is the child's going, oh, cool. And mum will be saying, oh, what have you got? What does it look like? Oh, and the mum will say, have you found what she's asking you to find? No, it's confusing. And you get much more of an interesting, rich data from what we were noticing was that, well, it makes sense. And if anyone's watching over your shoulder doing anything, it's a little bit uncomfortable. But just letting them have that playtime first is really important. And then I go back in and I'll say, oh, how did you get on? And they'll just be more open rather than keeping it quite formal. Siblings and friends. So when we are doing user testing, we will use an agency to do the recruitment, and we'll often ask for friendship pairs or we'll ask for siblings. And why we do that is, well, A, it means double the data, which is great, but it's really interesting. So coming back to the comfort thing, kids feel more comfortable when there's another child there. But also what's interesting about it is that when we get kids and we'll say, okay, I'm going to ask you to play the game first, and this is your sister, and you'll have a go. Now, can you explain to your sister what you've just done there? And listening to the language that they use is really insightful. And what the emphasis they'll put on certain elements is really important as well. And you might notice that kind of they didn't really get it, but you can't work that out just watching them. So they'll say, oh, yeah, I don't know how you do it, but you just do this, you do that. And it's really, really interesting to listen to that interaction. It can be challenging as well, because you need to make sure that the child who isn't doing something doesn't feel left out. So we've got into the habit now of just bringing a second phone or tablet along, and if they really need proper distraction, we'll just get them to play on the website until we're ready to talk to them. But it's super great, and it also helps with when you've got shy children. It helps build their confidence that they can say something because their friend has just said something. And the next point is about language. So, prototype, content, layout, navigation. All these words are really familiar to me and you, but to someone who's not techie and also to someone who's just a child, it's a little bit, ooh, what foreign language to them. So to be really careful about the language that we use, and actually it's takes quite a lot of practice to get used to phrasing things in certain ways. So I think I've got a little cartoon here. This is about avoiding bad language. So you might look at that sentence and think, actually, there's nothing wrong with that sentence. It's just saying, please could you search for Sarah and Duck? Sarah and Duck is a show. But actually, why not just say, can you find Sarah and Duck? Search? Okay, they might probably be familiar with that from YouTube, but why bother? And I mentioned before that we always tend to be a bit, your discussion guide may go out the window, but actually taking a few moments when you're writing down the things you want to get out of your session and how you will say them, that kind of ingrains you, right, don't talk too much, don't use too elaborate language. Just be quite simple and quite clear. Children's attention span isn't as good as adults as well, so if you're rambling on about the tasks that you want them to do, they'll lose concentration after a few moments. And of course, it's not a test. Again, this is one that applies to both adults and children. But for a child, when they see an adult who they don't know, they'll often think of you, right, you're a grown-up, you're not my mum, you're not my dad, you're not my aunt or my uncle, you're probably a teacher, because that's really the only other adult figure they tend to see. So what they will tend to do is try to get your approval. So they'll try to do it right, and they're probably thinking, oh God, here's an adult, here's a grown-up, here's another boring test, oh, she's going to ask me how I thought that was. So how we get around that is that we really positively reinforce the I don't know answer, or I can't. That is super, that's great, because what you're telling me is, now we know what to fix. Brilliant. And interestingly, I'll talk a little bit about the parents in a moment, but often we have to reinforce that message for the parents as well. I'll give you an example. We were doing some testing a couple of weeks ago on our website, and we were asking this child to find a show on the website. I did the thing where I was like, great, I'll be back in a minute, I'm just going to go get a drink. So I'm standing back there, and the child's going, Mum, I can't find it. And she's like, oh, you told me that you used this website, look harder. I can't find it. Well, have you looked for the search? And she was panicking that he couldn't do it. And actually, what we were learning is, great, this obviously is not easy for the child, now we know what to fix. So I went back in, and I said, oh, how'd you get on? He said, couldn't find it. And I said, perfect, brilliant, that's super. I'm going to make a note of that and tell the people who've made this website. And Mum said, oh, well, he can usually do this at home, And you've got these parents who are hoping their children will perform on cue. And I actually had to say to her, no, this is absolutely perfect. This is exactly what we need. I don't know is a brilliant answer. And children take a lot, I don't know whether it's a trust thing, but sometimes they can take quite a lot of that repeating, super, 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 brilliant, I don't know, perfect, to kind of coax them around, to be confident enough to say, actually, I'm not sure about that. How was that? It's a pretty big question. Pretty big question for a child whose language skills mightn't be great, who mightn't feel confident to articulate that experience. We always say, use open questions, brilliant. But how was that? Or should it be, well, how was that? Good, bad, somewhere in the middle? I've brought with me an adaptation of, they use this in schools, they use this in hospitals quite a lot. It's the pain scale. So when a child goes to casualty and they're crying and they're in pain, the doctor will say, how much pain is it? And children are just in pain. They just want you to fix their pain. But this scale is almost kind of, woohoo, at this end. And then in the actual pain scale, I think it's a crying child. We've just put angry. But again, it's something where they can articulate. So if you've got a shy child, someone who's not that confident, or if they are very, very expressive, but it's great to kind of get a metric of what they mean when they say something. And not only that, what we notice is that children love to have things to touch and to play with. They kind of get bored doing the same task over and over again. So if you give them this, you give them some markers, colour in what you think. It's brilliant. And this scale can be easy to difficult, good to bad, slow to fast. So really, really effective way of gathering that feedback. But of course, it's not always about what they say. It's how do they react? What are they saying when they've opened that? Are they looking great? What's their body language like? And that's really even more important when you're dealing with children because, as I said, the articulation of how they feel might not always be the best. And this picture here is from a lab session that we did a couple of months ago. And this is where we're standing in the gallery here. We'll always have about 2 people in the gallery, but I think at this time we had about 6. So the user testing session's going on over here. And this guy here, he is just making notes on what the facial reactions are, what the body language is like. So he'll write something like, opens home screen, frowned, 5 seconds. He's not making any notes on what they're saying. And it's really important, actually, because when we are writing up our reports of how the user session went, often we'll just refer back to the notes of what's been said. But with kids, it's much, much more important to marry that up with their body language as well. And obviously, you can see that we're filming the sessions too, and we'll always look back at those. So really important. And of course, sometimes silence is golden. I think as humans, we have a natural instinct to help someone out when they're struggling. And that emphasis is even stronger when you're dealing with a child. But letting them struggle is actually quite important because it shows to us what part of the design isn't working or if it's not working at all. Again, I'll give you an example of a little 3.5-year-old I was doing testing with before Christmas. And I was asking her to find this show on the website. And her eyes kept darting top right. And she was up and down, silence, this is all silent. And she just looked and she goes, I can't, no. And I said, what were you looking for? And she said, and she started pointing at the top right of the screen. And she said, I was looking for, And I say, I'm just going to let her, because you're trying to kind of go, oh, it was the show you're looking for, my next step? And I said, microphone. And I said, a microphone? And she made a little action with her fingers. And she goes, like on YouTube, when you search, it's got a microphone. And I think she meant magnifying glass is what she was trying to say. But it was like, oh, okay. And then we learned, great, so there's familiar patterns we need to look at and we need to replicate. But had I just stopped her right at the start going, no, you can't do that, we'd have lost that interesting bit of insight about the YouTube connection. So those are kind of the tips, I suppose, the little things that we use in order to get the best out of our sessions. I think the last thing to mention that's, I suppose, unique to this audience that we don't always have with adults is that there's this person sitting right here, mum or dad or granny or granddad. She's a translator. That's super. You get a kid who's coming in who's really shy. Engage mum in the action. Go, okay, mum, why don't we work on this? And then suddenly the child's going, okay, my mum's okay with this person, I'll be okay as well. And fantastic in terms of if the child's trying to say something and they can't, or the mum can provide context, or mum or dad can provide context to, oh, well, when we're at home, what he means is we go on this website or that website. I've written your best friend, asterisk, your best managed friend, I'd say. Again, you have to watch out for those parents who are trying to get their kid to perform or trying to give the right answers. Really quickly, another example, we were testing avatars, and we weren't really sure what the avatar should look like. So we just drew up loads of mock examples of what an avatar might look like. And for a laugh, we threw in the CBeebies little characters, they're kind of splodgy little things. And we said, oh, just that'll be extra stimulus, put that in. So we asked the kid, this is what the avatar is for. Which one feels like you? And they were picking out. And I said, and do you want to pick one for Dad as well? And this kid picked up another avatar. And the dad said, oh, no, I think I would pick the yellow one, the little CBeebies character. And I said, oh, why is that? He goes, I just feel it's on brand. I feel like, that's on brand. And I was thinking, oh, God, this guy's obviously hoping that I'm going to get this answer from him. So best friend, but managed best friend, I would say. So hopefully, to wrap up really quickly, hopefully you'll understand that kids, they want to have fun. They want to explore. And if the environment is making them have fun and explore and they're safe, then using these kind of tips and techniques, I suppose, will really help get the most out of those sessions. So thank you very much for your time tonight.